Thank you all for joining my talk today about the importance of cultural diversity. This is a topic which is very personal to me and has lived with me for the longest time. So I'm happy to share it with you today and my thoughts and experiences based on my 12+ year career in the industry of film and television. I'll start off by asking you all what storytelling means to you. We each have our varied and lived experiences with storytelling. No two experiences are identical. Whether you're the next J.K. Rowling, Paulo Coelho, or even Christopher Nolan, since at the time of this recording, Barbenheimer has been taking off on social media. I will fall into film and television specifically throughout this talk, given that it is my bread and butter after so many years. However, storytelling really comes down to an experience, and whatever that may be for you. It is a creative endeavor with endless possibilities, and you can choose for it to be whatever you want it to be. Honestly, with the advent of technology nowadays, like AI, virtual reality, robotics, it is the most interactive and sensory experience that you can have. So storytelling can be on any platform you choose it to be, in any format that you choose it to be, whether you want to be the next scientist or engineer, or whether you are a creative. So at the core, though, with storytelling, the beauty of it is the human element. And as humans, we have an obligation, a responsibility to share our experiences, to tell our story and present our perspectives. And like I said earlier, no two experiences are identical. So I think that's really important to remember, because we are all inspired by very similar subjects, and there are stories that have, come out to be similar to other stories in the past. Before there was a Charles Dickens, there was someone else that, Charles Dickens was inspired by. So each of us has mentors, and I've been privileged and honored to have amazing mentors across my career, which have helped shape me into the person that I am today. So I am very thankful for that. However, because of storytelling being a lived experience, a human experience, this leads me to the topic of the hour, which is cultural diversity. And I think with cultural diversity, there's been an increase in ethnically diverse casting and stories that we're seeing today, whether you're watching on streaming platforms or, YouTube. You've started to notice that there's been this massive trend of really pushing for ethnically diverse storytelling, casting, acting, whatever it may be. And according to the 2019 Hollywood Diversity Report, there has been an increase in ethnic diversity casting within lead roles, which is fantastic. Obviously, more can always be done, and more does need to be done to make up for a long history of a lack in minority representation. But this is a great advancement for our industry and our society. Black Panther came in as a great example for people with a thirst for different stories, for stories that highlighted the rich African culture. There was a desire to learn about people that lived millions of miles away from you, or even millions of years ahead or before you. And Black Panther was a great example of that, along with a lot of other, there's been even Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a fantastic, I think, experience, because even though it didn't really focus on a cultural sort of angle in terms of the core concept of the movie, but I think what was great about it is that it did show how diverse a school environment actually is. Nobody has grown up very rarely has grown up in an entirely white society or an entirely male society. unless they've been isolated somewhere. But that's not been, generally speaking, the experience of a lot of people, especially people who, you know, like me or my siblings, or people who have been raised in the West that come from Middle Eastern, Asian, Southeast Asian ethnicities. And so I remember having friends from all kinds of diverse backgrounds. And so I think in the case of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, this was one of those wonderful things to see. You know, it was one of those moments where you actually got to see hijabi, you know, walking across the school hall. You know, you've seen characters that are either African American or Native American or Asian, etc. You know, or racially ambiguous even. And I think that those experiences also matter, because even though the story is not about a specific culture or really trying to highlight that, I think that it did truly show the value and the importance of noticing that it's, hey, hang on a second, this is what my real environment looks like. And George Gerbner said it best. He did term the coin. Coin the term symbolic annihilation. And even though that sounds very tough as a sort of word to, or phrase rather, to really absorb, his quote said, "Representation in the fictional world signifies social existence, and the absence means symbolic annihilation." And that is so true and incredibly deep, even in the day and age that we live in. Many, unfortunately, to this day, still question the importance of cultural diversity. Yet the impact has already been seen. I mean, in society, in politics, in the arts, even when it comes to mental health. When you look at the mental health of people within the minority groups, and you've seen the effect that it's had to see how cultural representation, how them actively participating in society and contributing and being a part of day-to-day social events has improved their mental health is beyond amazing. And it should really be highlighted much more. How they view themselves, how they view their abilities, their skills, their talent, myself included, you know, and it's a form of self-validation as well. Building those bridges allows us to normalize positive perspectives on cultures that we don't know much about, you know, and ultimately erase those negative stereotypes and sometimes even outrageous stereotypes that some may have about your culture, about my culture. And I can tell you from a personal perspective, sometimes I've been told certain things like, you know, oh, hang on a second, you know, you actually are quite educated when you speak, or you're quite intelligent. And it's very shocking to me, but it is a real thing for a lot of people. And so I think it's super important to highlight how normalizing our existence, normalizing our presence, our abilities, our skills, what we contribute to the world as a whole is very, very important. And it's something that unfortunately has been a big issue since the start of the entertainment industry. So this leads me to my next point, which I get asked a lot, especially by the younger generation who are trying to break into the industry and make their mark. How do I do it? How do I get the next big thing or create the next big thing? And I'm sorry to disappoint. I mean, it's not really a disappointment. I think it's just a reality. You know, there's no formulaic solution. There are no set rules on how to achieve that. But what I can say is there's something to be said about the importance of education. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, we're having this summit now and it's all about, you know, how to educate yourself about certain topics, but truly, really and truly, education has and still continues to be play a massive role in my personal development, first as a person and second as a storyteller. And so I can't emphasize that enough. But that being said, if we're being very pragmatic, I think above all of that, and including people who are academic and are in education, I think the number one thing is determination, 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 passion, and of course, a strong foundation for a story to tell, because story is king at the end of the day, right? However, I would say, don't be dragged into minority checklists as a storyteller. And we see that sometimes with, they don't necessarily succeed, but it's happened, where unfortunately an executive or a producer or a studio thinks that it's going to bring in the big bucks to bring in a diverse cast for the sake of it, or bring in more women, to cast more women, or to cast more women writers. And unfortunately, that's not how it works, right? So you need to have a good story as the core foundation, in my opinion. And success is obviously a long road. But that being said, when you believe in your story and you believe what you're saying, that is ultimately the best way to success. And really and truly, I've been told this time and time again by mentors of mine. But at the end of the day, if you believe in your story, you are going to have a fan base. And that fan base is what's going to catapult your success. So I would definitely say, really believe in what you're saying. Don't do it just for the sake of a trend, or don't do it just for the sake of, checking off a mark, as they say. And I think if I'm going to leave you with one single piece of advice, today, I will say no story is ever small or too big or too problematic or not controversial enough, right? And the reason I say that is because you don't have to solve all your cultures or your personal flaws or conflicts or struggles. You don't have to solve your the next big political issue or global warming. You don't, if you want to, obviously, go for it, right? But you don't have to do that. You don't have to write the next, mind-boggling war-related drama in order to make it big, right? You honestly, at the end of the day, like I said, you need to believe in your story. And that's where your cultural experience as a person, before it being about the society around you or about the color of someone's skin or about a person's religion, before it being that, I think it's more to do with how you perceive your personal story and how your vision is never going to be like anyone else's. And I think that's amazing. It's your own kind of personal thumbprint, as they say. And once you realize that your story is yours, you will achieve the recognition that you want. Whether, it's baby steps, right? Like, it's not going to be an overnight success, or it might be. But always believe that that is the first sign of success, is you believing in yourself. And for the longest time, I suffered thinking that, I'm Middle Eastern, but I never grew up in a war-torn country. I never suffered from any sort of trauma in a large-scale sense, as in what you hear about stereotypes in the Middle East. I never necessarily went through that myself. And so I always felt like, shamed by my own perception of what that should be like, or by my own sort of ideas of what my story should sound like. And that was the worst thing I could do, because at the end of the day, I was thinking to myself, hang on, that shouldn't matter. And I don't have to be deep and meaningful about everything that I do. Sometimes a good laugh can solve a lot of problems, and that's your way of adding value to society. So my time is almost up, but I wanted to thank you all again for listening to my talk today. And I hope in small ways that I've been able to inspire, hopefully, your brilliant and successful journey ahead as storytellers. And that I've been able to be a part of that is very big for me. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing some of you in the live summit, or speaking to some of you rather. So thank you.